This is CNN Breaking News.
We begin with the breaking news. President Biden and former President Trump putting the immigration crisis front and center during dueling stops in Texas, right near the border with Mexico. Both of them seeing openings to use the politically charged issue against one another. Our correspondents are on the scene where the likely 2024 rivals just spoke. Kristen Holmes is covering Donald Trump for us. Priscilla Alvarez is covering President Biden. Let's go to Priscilla first. What was the president's message, Priscilla, just a short while ago?
After that, he got operational briefings.
Wolf, going into today, White House officials made clear that what they wanted to do was to hammer Republicans over that failed Senate border bill. That included some of the toughest border security measures in recent memory. And that is something that President Biden in his remarks alluded to repeatedly, making the point that Border Patrol and other federal immigration officials need more resources and that there needs to be change in the immigration system because what it is now is just not working. And he repeatedly said that it was time to act. I'll also note that in multiple occasions he referenced Republican talking points like fentanyl, cartels, criminals in relation to the U.S.-Mexico border to make the point that resources are needed to stop all of that and calling on Congress to provide that. But of course, it is former President Donald Trump and his encouragement of Republicans to walk away from that failed Senate border bill that is the reason for its failure. And former President Biden also mentioning his predecessor in his remarks.
I understand my predecessor's legal past today. So here's what I would say to Mr. Trump. Instead of playing politics with this issue, instead of telling members of Congress to block this legislation, join me, or I'll join you, in telling the Congress to pass this bipartisan border security bill. We can do it together. You know and I know it's the toughest, most efficient, most effective border security bill this country has ever seen. So instead of playing politics with the issue, why don't we just get together and get it done?
Remarks, any mention of slaying University.
Well, if that was just a really remarkable moment, that goes to show how far this White House has come on this issue. It's one that they kept at a distance for years. It's one that sources told me whenever it came up within the White House was always tense. But here, President Biden making clear that he can be tough on the U.S.-Mexico border, too, and inviting former President Donald Trump to join him on that front.
Priscilla, stand by. I want to bring in Kristen right now. Kristen, Trump spent most of his remarks stoking fear about migrant crime. Did he offer any solutions at all to the crisis along the border?
Well, the solution was vote for me in 2024 and I will, quote unquote, fix the border. They have continued to say that he could do what Biden can't. And we have to remember that he's really taking a page from a playbook that he's been using since 2015. This messaging, fear stoking around immigration is something that he has done since the day he launched his presidential bid in 2015, saying that Mexico was sending over rapists and drug dealers. This is something that he plans on continuing to do. They believe that that because of the recent polling that shows that more and more voters are deeply concerned about immigration, that they can play up this angle that there is so much crime in America and it's being caused by undocumented migrants. Now, the other thing I want to point out here, Wolf, is that there have been some recent high-profile cases that have been committed by undocumented migrants. But overall, statistically speaking, this is much lower than average crime rates altogether. However, Donald Trump, he knows that he can use this as to his advantage, and that's what he did today. Take a listen.
Now the United States is being overrun by the Biden migrant crime. It's a new form of vicious violation to our country. It's migrant crime. We call it Biden migrant crime, but that's a little bit long. So we'll just leave it. But every time you hear the term migrant crime, you know where that comes from. Allowing thousands and thousands and actually millions and millions of people to come. Could be 15 million, could be 18 million by the time he gets out of office.
And just to be clear again, linking immigrants and all immigrants to violent crime, first of all, it's just inaccurate. Like I said, it's a much smaller percentage that are committing violent crimes. However, it also is the way that Donald Trump feels like he got elected in 2016. This was the message that carried him into the White House, and he believes it can take him into 2024. I just want to remind once again, this is exactly where he wants to be when it comes to immigration. In a space where there are an unprecedented number of people crossing the border, in a space in which Joe Biden is on defense, and in a space where he can really hammer home immigration.
Kristen Holmes, thank you very much. Priscilla Alvarez, I want you to stay with us. I also want to bring in CNN political commentator Scott Jennings and Kate Bedingfield into this conversation. Kate, we just heard from President Biden as the White House has changed its strategy on immigration, now taking this issue on directly. Can this work for them politically?
I think it can. I think this is very smart of them. Donald Trump and the Republicans have given them a huge opening to go on the offensive here. I mean, basically, what you see Biden doing today is calling Trump's bluff, is saying, you know, we worked through this package that included some of the most intense, strictest measures that have been considered in the last 2 decades to deal with this problem. We included funding for more agents. And you directed the Republicans to walk away from it. You said no, you'd rather have the political issue. And I think people will see through that. I mean, the other problem that Donald Trump has here is that independents and more moderate Republicans don't embrace the proposals that he's putting on the table. I mean, he's talking about family separation. He's talking about mass deportations. Those are not things that anybody except for the very hardcore MAGA base views as the solution here. So I think it's smart for Joe Biden to go on the offensive, to be aggressive, to not give Donald Trump his photo op today at the border alone. And to call his bluff and say, I'm the one who's put solutions on the table. You're the one who's playing politics with this issue.
And on that point, Scott Jennings, President Biden is slamming the Republicans for killing that bipartisan deal that included money for border security. But if the border remains a problem, will voters actually remember this months from now? Trump is betting they won't.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump is right. I mean, look what happened in the last week in the Gallup poll. Immigration became the #1 issue in the country. And it didn't become the #1 issue because of wrangling in Congress. It became the #1 issue because people are tired of what they're seeing at their border. They are tired of the crime. They are tired of a lack of attention by President Biden. And then at the same time, they tested issues on Biden. The worst issue for his job approval was immigration. -39 points underwater on the issue of immigration. He's only at the border today because he has nowhere to go but up here. I admire my Democratic sparring partner's pluck today in trying to put a good face on this. This issue is killing Joe Biden right now. He has no choice but to go to the border and try to do something because right now it is literally the most important issue in the country and the worst issue that Americans have for him on job approval.
You know, Priscilla, you've covered these issues rather extensively. Trump and Republicans say Biden can act on his own without additional legislation. But how critical is more funding to getting the situation over at the border with Mexico under control?
Well, it really can't be overstated. I regularly talk to Homeland Security officials who always come back to they need more money. And it was the case also with the Trump administration and the Obama administration. The Department of Homeland Security is chronically underfunded. And so what they're facing here when they're also dealing with surges at the U.S.-Mexico border is immense strain on their resources. And so that was something that came up quite a bit today when President Biden had his operational briefing with federal authorities, in which he also talked about the fact that this border bill would also get them more personnel, more money, and more technology. But there are two things happening at once here. There's the Senate border bill, which would prove pivotal for this White House because it gave them an opportunity to go after Republicans after they tanked it, despite the tough measures in it. But the border crossings are also lower than where they have been. In December, we were talking about record levels of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border. They have dropped by 50% in January following talks with Mexico. And so it gives the president runway to really seize on this issue. What happens when border crossings go up again, as they are expected to? It's unclear. But for the moment, they can make the point and the argument that they need the money because otherwise the system simply cannot handle what the situation is today.
Yeah, good point. Kate, what did you make of the direct appeal President Biden made to Trump to work with him to try to get Congress to pass a border security bill? What's going on there?
Well, you know, Wolf, this is actually a really underappreciated political dynamic because I think it's easy, particularly on cable news and on Twitter, where people are really trying to score points and make their case. Actually, most voters across the country want to see their elected officials work together. It may sound strange to to hear Joe Biden saying, Donald Trump, come to the table with me. But actually, most people who are just going about their lives, they actually want to see their elected officials work together. So again, I think this is another case of Biden calling Trump's bluff. He's saying, listen, I'm willing to take measures here. I'm willing to find solutions. We're at the 1 yard line and you fumbled the ball. So if you want to come to the table and get things done, I'm willing to work with you. It shows people that he's serious about the issue.
Yeah, that's important as well. Scott, how likely are swing voters out there to look past any potential reservations they may have with Trump if they see him as better on what they regard as the most important issue facing the country? As you see in this new poll, 28% saying it's the top issue.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's becoming more and more important as people get familiar with these stories like the Laken Riley story out of Georgia. I mean, Republicans and I think independent swing voters are on fire about this because they wonder, at the same time Joe Biden's administration was telling us the border was secure in 2022, the person who's alleged to have killed that young lady, that's about the time he was coming across. And people wonder, how can you tell us the border is secure, but at the same time, apparently violent criminals are coming in and then committing unspeakable acts against American citizens, young people like that college student? It's despicable. So you can call it anecdotal and you can throw charts and graphs at people, but these are emotional, visceral stories, and they put a human face on what people now believe is a complete failure by the executive branch to handle and secure the southern border.
Very strong analysis from all of you. Thanks once again.